What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Gaming Channel. My name's AJ Gels. How y'all doing? It's about that time once again for the weekly show. If you're new to this program, basically what I do is I find news from around the web having to do with video games from around the week. I sit here, I talk about it. If anybody was wondering, no, I will not be talking about the whole drama that's been going down this week about the Guild Wars 2 developer who got fired. I really just don't care about it, and so if you're here looking for that and wondering why it's not on the show, it's just because that's gotten into the realm of politics. It's not what I like to do on this channel. I like to focus mostly on just game news. So really, other than that, this week there really wasn't a whole hell of a lot going on. As always, I will provide links to every story and video that I talk about down in the description, along with links to all the social media. You can send me links to any stories throughout the week that you found interesting, and I will look into them and see if we can cover them on the weekly show. As always, you can also send me links down in the comments, and other than that, hit that like button if you enjoy the video, and subscribe if you're not already. Also in the description will be timestamps of when each topic is hit. So, really, I'm for once, I don't feel like ranting a lot. So, you know what? Let's just hop straight into the news. And we're going to start with a short story here by PC Gamer, article by Andy Chalk. Far Cry 5 goes off-world next week in the Lost on Mars expansion. This expansion really, it seems like they're announcing these expansions about a week before they drop. I kind of like that, so it's not like, ooh, here's a lot of lead up. Nope, it's coming out. Here's what to expect. Play it next week. I really enjoy that. And I gotta say, I was really surprised with how good, what was the last one? Hours of Darkness was. I was really surprised. I wasn't expecting what we got. I was expecting something a little bit more linear, or something with story missions. Not that you were gonna drop us down in this spot, go from the starting point to the end point, and you can do all this extra stuff. It was a really interesting DLC that I think one of the few times I will accept the whole, well, you build your own narrative, but it's kind of cool thinking that this is just a couple of hours trying to traverse this area within Vietnam and all this. I thought it was really interesting. Really fun DLC, plus the survival mode was really cool too. All right, let's get into the article. The article reads, Lost on Mars, the second of 3 expansions slated to come to Far Cry 5, will be out on July 17th. Ubisoft announced today the DLC will take players away from the friendly confines of Hope County. Friendly is a bit of a stretch, but all right. And the planet Earth for a stand-up fight against the spiders from Mars, who are plotting to invade our world. So apparently there's spiders on Mars. What is this, Starship Troopers? God, that was a good movie. In the expansion, players will take on the persona of local plaid aficionado Nick Rye, a bush pilot and Far Cry 5 NPC who rushes to the rescue when his friend Herc, because of course it's Herc, takes up arms to ward off an alien invasion. The usual terrestrial arsenal will be bolstered by off-world weaponry like the Blaster of Disaster, the Taser Phaser Annihilator, the Morphinator, and the Blaster of... Oh, wait, did I already read that? I already read Blaster of Disaster. Shit. And the Obliterator. While space jets will help players get around more quickly, the expansion will also bring new Mars-themed assets to Far Cry Arcade, which all players will have access to. Kind of cool to see Nick Rye coming back. I honestly thought personally, if it comes down to Nick Rye or play as Herc, I'd like to play as Herc. Well, that's because I like Herc. But I like these names: the Blaster of Disaster, the Taser Phaser Annihilator. Yeah, that's pretty fun. This expansion strikes me as more blatantly Blood Dragon-esque than the first Far Cry 5 DLC, Hours of Darkness, perhaps because it's so much more otherworldly and goofy than the core game. That's a pretty big plus for an expansion after the relative seriousness of Far Cry 5, and yes, I know there's a bear named Cheeseburger who will fight for you on command. Good point. It's nice to spin off into something... God damn it, so willfully silly. Far Cry 5 Lost on Mars will be available for $10, or as part of the $30 season pass, or the $90 gold edition of the game. The third and final expansion, Dead Living Zombies, is expected to be out in August. Yeah, overall, I'm interested in this. It does seem a lot more. I have to agree with them. I mean, I think anybody who looks at this has to agree with them. This looks a lot more Blood Dragon-y than the last DLC. I was actually kind of expecting the last DLC to be more of like a movie kind of idea, you know, kind of like a Rambo sort of thing. Which I'm not saying it wasn't. It kind of was, but it took a lot more of a serious tone. Like, I was expecting them to actually kind of tell a small story of, you know, some goofiness and some, I'm trying to think how to explain this, kind of do like a Rambo spoof, if that makes sense. Kind of have it be a little goofy, but at the same time kind of show this, you know, you're the lone soldier in the brush fighting the enemy behind enemy lines, you know, that sort of thing. But instead what we got was more of a very serious shooter about, and really, I guess if you want to extrapolate some themes, it was kind of about brotherhood and about, you know, rescuing, you know, no man left behind and all that. But again, I really liked Hours of Darkness, so I'm less excited for Lost on Mars. I think Hours of Darkness and the zombie one were the ones that super interested me the most. This one, not so much, but honestly, knowing that Herc's going to be in it, hearing some of these weapon names, gotta say I'm a little bit more interested as we go with it, and I'm going to be glad to see where we go from here with these expansions. Sorry, I'm switching out my glasses. I forgot to put on my reading glasses. There we go. Now I'm officially an old man. All right, moving on. We have an article on, or well, I guess an interview on the PlayStation blog. Interview Miyazaki on the limbs and lore of Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. Written by Justin Mossengill, social media director, SIEA. Sony Interactive Entertainment, excuse me. Let's see here. The thing reads, a few weeks ago, I was granted an opportunity one does not pass up. A one-on-one interview with Hidetaka, and let me try that again, Hidetaka, there we go, Miyazaki, the famed director of Dark Souls and Bloodborne, set aside an hour on the final day of E3 to answer my questions about Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, the mysterious new project, or the mysterious new PS4 project currently in development. We discussed the game's setting, Miyazaki-san's reoccurring theme of death, and his philosophy on lore versus story. I mean, this isn't a PS4 exclusive, is it? Because this was shown, this was revealed at the Xbox conference. Like, was I imagining that? Was I drunk? Which was weird because I wasn't drinking during the Microsoft conference. But if I remember, this is a multi-platform game. This isn't a PS4 exclusive. Even though I swear to God, this was shown to us, this was teased to us at last year's PSX. So I find it a little weird that it's on a PlayStation exclusive, but whatever. Now, what we read here, the first one in the game setting, that's a little dry. I'll still read it for anybody who cares, but I'm probably not going to have commentary for it. The recurring theme of death is interesting, but what I really want to kind of talk about, and that's really want to get into when we get to that chunk of the thing, is lore versus story. I think it was an interesting discussion. Shit. Sorry. That was an alarm to make sure I was at least up by this time to do this show. My bad, guys. All right. Let's see here. PlayStation blog. Sekiro is set during the late 1500s in Sengoku era Japan. What led you to that direction? Miyazaki, if we're going to do something with ninjas, there are two key areas that are relevant, the Edo period and the Sengoku period. For context, the Sengoku period was a bit earlier than the Edo period. We ended landing on the Sengoku period because it was dirtier, it was grittier, and bloodier. It had more of a feel of the type of world we want to create. A good fit for a From Software game. That was PlayStation blog, Miyazaki. The other reason we landed on this period is because it still seems medieval versus the Edo period, which feels more modern in my mind. It feels more believable to see something mystical or having to do with the presence of gods in the Sengoku period. Excuse me. Another thing is that it's set at the end of the Sengoku period. The reason for that is, in my opinion, there's a nuance, a beauty in the finality of something coming to an end that fits our artistic sense, and we wanted to express that. Well, I mean, just looking at some of the pictures that we have seen of Sekiro, this one's got a little bit more color, but even then, it's still very muted. It's still, like, you know, you see the damp orange, the white even though it adds color, it's not necessarily like bright and happy. It's very pretty. And again, same thing with this. Very pretty, but very dark and grungy compared to another samurai game. I can't remember what period. Why can't I think of the Sucker Punch game? It's escaping me right now, and I feel like a complete and utter jackass because I can't think of the title right now. Ghost of Tsushima. There we go. Jeez. Ghost of Tsushima, while it had a very bright look to it, Sekiro is a lot more this kind of dark, grungy, almost kind of what I would expect to see out of a fantasy setting of Japan. Maybe more of like an anime. Like this is something that I'd actually, like a shot I'd expect to see out of an anime, kind of the same setting. While I think Ghost of Tsushima is kind of I don't want to say it's a, what's the word for it? I'm trying to think if there's kind of like a samurai movie spoof, kind of like the way that a spaghetti western shows the West. That it's not, it's a Hollywood version of it. I don't want to say that's what Ghost of Tsushima is doing to its era, but it is very colorful. It is very, very interesting for the eye. So I think it is more of a kind of like the idea of like what we'd see in like a samurai movie. While I think this is more like that dirty, grungier thing that we'd see out of an anime. Somebody feel free to tell me that they disagree. I love how I said I wasn't really too terribly interested in the world stuff, and then I just go on that little rant. All right, back to the interview from PlayStation Blog. On that note, your games often deal with death as a theme. What impact will death have on the story and gameplay of Sekiro? Miyazaki, probably the best way to cover that question is to directly address the fact that there is resurrection in the game. My idea of a ninja fighting rather than, say, a knight fighting is that ninjas can't take a lot of damage. They're taking a huge risk. They're very vulnerable while they're fighting. It's this idea of fighting on the edge. It's a risky situation where if you screw up by a hair's breadth, it's over. With a knight, there's more back and forth. There's armor and all that. The idea of that type of fighting is where the idea of resurrection came from. With that image for the combat, that it's risky, a slight mistake and you're dead. If you had to go back every time you die and walk back to where you were, the tempo of the game would not feel very good. The idea of resurrection is that it helps the flow of the game. Yes, you have, helps the flow of the game, and yes, you have this battle, but you don't necessarily need to go back every time you die. This helps to balance that out and allow for that riskier edge of knife type of gameplay. See, now this is what I found really interesting when I was kind of skimming through this. That it's going to be different from the previous From Software games where you die and you go back to like a bonfire or whatever they did in Bloodborne. I can't remember what they did exactly in that one. Because honestly, that was what kept me out of those games, is the fact that I kept having to go back and just go back. But mostly because I die constantly in those games because I'm a filthy, filthy casual. But yeah, that was always my probably my big issue with the Dark Souls games, or the Souls type games. And honestly, and people want to rip me on this, it's because they're too fucking hard. It's just they weren't fun for me. They were too hard. I never got, as I'll put it, the story reward. Although we will go into that a little later because they talk about some interesting stuff on that. But again, that's for down the road. But this idea of resurrection might be really interesting, and I'm not sure how they're going to do it yet. The way it sounds is that it's going to be similar to Fables 2 and 3, where you just resurrect there. But I'm not sure. There's some stuff that he talks about in a little bit later. I'll keep this thought, but that's just from here. That kind of reminds me of, like I said, like something that Fable did in its last couple games. It's also related to the game's story. It's related to the mystery surrounding the main character as well as the young lord. Resurrection will have something to do with them. One of the general concepts for the game is that you can kill ingenuously. A ninja is so resourceful that he can even make use of his own death to gain an advantage. That's kind of the idea we had. See, now that's where I found that interesting. So You know what? I'll finish these couple paragraphs. So to answer your question, there are 3 ways death influences Sekiro for the gameplay purposes of keeping the flow good and being able to have this risky situation, to be able to use it creatively, and also that the story centers around the concept of resurrection. There's one thing I'd like to make sure it isn't misunderstood. The resurrection system was not introduced to make the game easier. If anything, it actually can make the game harder because it allows us to push the edge of risky combat where the player can die at any moment. Okay, so hearing that is starting to make me think it's not like it's not like Fable. I'm still we don't get a lot of details. I'm really curious to see is there a limit to the resurrection? How does it work? I'm curious to see if there's actually like stealth gameplay in this game, because they talk about a little bit later the idea of verticality. So I'm curious, like, is there going to be stealth in this way? Can you, like, is it kind of like feigning your death, but, you know, like actually dying and then resurrecting, that like they walk away from the body, then you resurrect, get behind him, and, you know, start stabbing. Is that how it works, or is it something different than that? I'm really interested to see how that works come the full release. PlayStation blog. So the game's difficulty was balanced around the idea of knowing the player can die and resurrect. Miyazaki, yeah, exactly. PlayStation blog. Can you speak more about what resurrection entails in Sekiro? How exactly does the mechanic work? Miyazaki, the system itself is not yet 100% final, so we don't want to say anything that might end up changing. What we can say is that it's in place to maintain the tempo of the game, and the difficulty of the game will be based around it. Just because you have this resurrection mechanic, it doesn't mean the player won't be afraid of death. So that's probably one of the really interesting things out of this from a gameplay perspective is the concept of this resurrection mechanic. What exactly is it? How is it done? You know, is it like unlimited? Is it kind of like the Mipha's Grace? I think that's what it was called in Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. I think that's one of the specials that you get for the divine beasts. Sorry, I've been playing that game too much. Yeah, I'm really curious to see how this does it, and also what the tempo, as he keeps talking about the tempo of this game. So I'm gonna guess this is a faster paced game compared to the old ones, and I think, at least for me, that will help this game, because another big problem, other than the fact that I just died constantly in Dark Souls, was just everything happens so slowly. It's like, God, what was it? Somebody once said that playing The Witcher 3 on Blood and Broken Bones, the hardest difficulty, or no, it's Death March is the hardest difficulty for The Witcher 3. They say it's kind of like playing a Souls game without playing a Souls game. Now I think it's still easier than a Souls game, but it's the speed of combat is what I like, and just something that's always turned me off about the Souls titles is just how slowly even combat is. It's just grind. And some people love it, and I'm glad they love it. I'm still saying that it's not for me. Let's see here. PlayStation blog. Can we talk about the main character's missing arm and how it will affect gameplay? Miyazaki. There were 2 things we really liked about using a ninja in terms of the game design. We've always designed stages with verticality in mind. We consider it one of our strengths. What really appealed to us was being able to explore that dynamically, not relying on ladders and other ways to move around these stages, but being able to just, boom, I'm there. The other thing is that when you're designing game around a ninja, it's not like a samurai. With a samurai, you go right in with a sword. With a ninja, you can sneak around. You can do things that are considered unfair. You can blind guys. You can do stuff that's not honorable. It was really exciting from a gameplay perspective because it's opened up so many options. So the 2 key aspects of the Shinobi prosthetic are that you can explore with verticality, and you have a variety of moves that you can use in combat. Okay, so for just taking that, I'm gonna guess that this arm is, we've seen like that. Yeah, there's looks like a little fishing wheel on the arm. I'm gonna guess the prosthetic also is some sort of is magic somehow, because it looks like a zombie arm. So, okay, so it's got kind of like a zip wire, kind of like a scorpion-esque zip wire. I'm going to guess maybe you could, like, pull combatants towards you in combat. It mentioned blinding people, so I'm going to guess that it's, like throwing acid or something in their face. I'm curious to see how that again works in gameplay, but I'm more interested in this from a story aspect. Just me personally. Another thing, just in this little section, I think that might have been a kind of a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge that stealth might be a bigger part of this game than it has in the others. I don't know. That's not been directly confirmed, but that's maybe something I'm reading a little too much into. But so the two key aspects of the Shinobi prosthetic. Wait, we already said that. There was a desire to have a symbol for the idea that you have a wide variety of things at your disposal. That's how we came up with the arm. It was a way to put that in a single place. The arm can let you do so many things. You can see that there are wires on it, there are tools on it. It kind of gives you the idea that you have this multi-use feature. PlayStation blog. Sekiro feels much faster than, say, a Dark Souls or Bloodborne. Is this more of an action game? Oral fans of the series feel at home here. There are two key things about battle in Sekiro. In combat, one of the key aspects that's important in this game is the violence of the clashing of swords. The other thing is the verticality and dynamic movement that you're allowed. See, and again, this is another area where I'm thinking stealth is being kind of told, like the verticality, dynamic movement. I'm also curious to see how sword fighting is going to be, if it's going to be, a lot more block parry kind of thing, or if it's going to be like Dark Souls where it's more of a dodge concept. The dynamism is in the combat as well. There are lots of different ways to approach a battle, such as stealth. There we go. Or using your arm tools. Attacking from above, for example, some of your ninja tools can take advantage of an enemy's weakness as well, or if you want, you can just go straight in with your sword. There are lots of different things you can do that will help you in battle. The game is designed in such a way that even if you are not insanely good at the game, you can figure out how to get through it if you think about it and play smart. Thank God! Something for morons like me. Something big that this is something that I compared this game to. I think when we saw, I think I made this this comparison when we saw it at E3. Was this reminds me a lot of Tenchu. So I think this is kind of like a Souls version of Tenchu, if I may. Again, this is me maybe throwing in some poorly done insights, but that's how it looks to me. PlayStation blog, changing gears. What's your philosophy when it comes to the idea of lore versus story? The former being focused on world building within the game, the other the act of actually telling a story. See, and that is what I will use to all my friends who want to tell me Dark Souls has a story. No, it has a lot of lore that you can find out, and that's cool. But there's really no story, in my opinion. I've never liked it that much. Just because I never feel like I got that story reward for completing something. It's just kind of like, great, you defeated the boss. Keep going. Oh, well, here, you can read this and find out more about the world. Well, okay, but I want a beautiful cutscene. I want some dialogue. I want I want character. That's what I want. And again, that's entirely a personal, subjective thing that I see in the industry, and it's, again, just something that's always kind of turned me off about the Souls games. Other people like it for that reason, and I will argue with you about it for the sheer hell of it. But, again, I'm hoping that we get a little bit more story in this one rather than lore. Just, again, my personal hopes. Miyazaki, there are some aspects of Sekiro that will be different than our previous games, and others that will be similar. In Sekiro, the story is actually centered around the main character. He's a character in the story who exists in this world. Previously, we had nameless characters who weren't as involved. Thanks to making the main character part of the story, the beginning of the game is probably easier to understand than our previous games. Thank God. I'm sorry to people who like the lore thing. It's just... so I think, again, a good comparison would be something like Neo, where you had a main character. Something like that. Aside from that, not too much is different. This isn't a game where you go through one area, kill a boss, watch a cutscene, then the game tells you where to go next. The story trickles in as you're playing the game. You'll find things that will give you more information on the world, the lore, if you will, along with actual story information as well. In that way, it's similar to our previous games. PlayStation blog, is there a particular reason you chose to tell your stories this way? Do you find that it's more effective way of storytelling? I'm a fan of stories that require you to use a little bit of imagination in order to really understand the whole thing. When I was young, I used to enjoy reading books that were too hard for me, where I could only read maybe half of the kanji and using my imagination to fill in the gaps. I wanted to see if I could bring that kind of experience to a video game where you use your imagination to bridge those gaps. I get it. I'm just not a guy with a whole hell of a lot of imagination. So I'm not a massive fan of that. Again, I think there's a good argument for both sides. The side that I want almost pure story, and the side that loves all the lore. It's like, I can't remember what game. I think it was like that game Inside or whatever, that 2D platformer. And people were like, oh, that I think somebody said should get nominated. I can't remember what outlet it was. And he's like, oh, well, it should get nominated for best narrative. And I'm like, really? It has no dialogue. Oh, well, that doesn't. Oh, you're creating the world with your own. You're creating your own stories and all this. And I'm just like, stow it. I do not like pure lore, and it sounds like this one's gonna have a little bit more story. Hopefully, there's some more cutscenes. I mean, as he said, it's not gonna be that traditional. You go kill the boss, cutscene, go here. Something like Bayonetta or something like the original God of Wars. I think it's going to be a little bit more, it's going to be more open, it's going to be more like the old ones, but I think there is going to be more story, at least from what I'm reading into from Miyazaki's words. We're getting here to the end. PlayStation blog from Software's announced 2 games at E3, Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, as well as Darksiders for PSVR. Has it been challenging to work on both simultaneously? Miyazaki: actually, I'm very used to directing multiple titles at once. Armored Core 4 and Demon's Souls were at the same time, while Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3 were at the same time. This is a pretty normal situation for me, but what wasn't normal was announcing 2 games at the same time. I actually prefer parallel directing multiple projects at once. As a creative, if you're focused on a singular thing all the time, it's easier to get stuck in the mentality. It's easier to find inspiration when you're working on multiple titles than it is when you're totally focused on one. I enjoy that. PlayStation blog, any final thoughts? Miyazaki: Sekiro Shadows Die Twice is a different kind of game. Our previous titles have been action RPGs. This time it's an action adventure. There are lots of cool new things that I'm looking forward to the fans enjoying, particularly the new story format, or at least the fact that the main character is a big deal in the story, the new ways to explore the world, and the new way that you're going to become more and more powerful. There are lots of aspects from our previous titles that I feel we've been able to iterate upon: the dynamic exploration, the violent sword fighting, and the huge number of strategic options. I feel that these are all major steps forward for these mechanics, and I'm really looking forward to fans playing it. PlayStation blog, so wait. So there you go. A nice little interview between PlayStation blog and Miyazaki. I don't have anything else to add. I pretty much said everything I want to, other than I think this might be the first time that I'm actually excited for a Souls type game, or really something from Software. Nothing. I understand the developer is amazing at what they do. It's just, again, nothing that's ever really spoken to me, kind of like this one is. But again, it's one of the 3 things that I always say. One of the 3 things that I will. Well, I guess technically 4, but I kind of I put a slash. So on the last one, which I always say, something that'll always get me interested in your game: cowboys, pirates, ninjas / samurais. I'm in. You always at least have my eye. All right, moving on to our final little bit here. Another release date that we finally got announced: Dark Souls 3 releasing on November 27th. Article Imran Khan of Game Informer. This is a super short one, then we actually have some gameplay. THQ Nordic confirmed today that Darksiders 3, the newest game in the Darksiders series from last generation, will launch this year on November 27th. Darksiders 3 was announced last year after an Amazon listing leaked its existence. THQ Nordic announced that the game was being developed by Gunfire Games, a studio made up primarily of developers from the former Darksider development studio Vigil Games. THQ Nordic acquired the Darksiders license a bit after THQ closed down and started talking about a possible new Darksiders in 2013. In addition to the standard edition, Darksiders 3, also available $150 collector's thing. Below contains soundtrack art book, $400 Apocalypse Edition, figurines, blah, 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 blah. Darksiders 3 PC November, all consoles November 27th. Actually, I'm not sure if it's going to be on Switch. As far as I know, PlayStation 4 and Xbox and PC. Real quick before we get into the video here, I want. Does anybody else find it odd that we're not playing as one of the other horsemen? I mean, granted, we're playing as we've already played in the first two Darksiders as the two horsemen that people probably know more. You know, War and Death, and then the other two. I'm trying to think. One is Conquest, and the other is Famine. I'm not entirely sure, actually. I can't remember the fourth horseman. I don't know. I personally, I've never played the other Darksiders games. One of those that I've kind of been meaning to get into because I think they're on next gen. Maybe doing a series of them before we play Darksiders 3. But as far as I understand the games, they're very similar to the old style of come on brain, old style of God of War rather than the new more the new style that we saw in the most recent God of War. But here we go. We got a nice little 11 minutes of gameplay from Darksiders 3 from IGN first. Let's do it to it. The sound of the game is a little off. It sounds like it's underwater. I don't know. I can't really fix that. So, I mean, first things first, I mean, obviously it's the, looking at the art style of the game, not going photorealistic, but I mean, again, the series has never really been photorealistic, if you ask me. I mean, of what I've seen of previous Darksiders game. You know, I mean, they're always kind of switching up the combat. Looks like Fury, the main character, her weapon's more blades of chaos. It kind of looks like the blades of chaos. You know, it's kind of a whip sword. Rather than what did War use? War used that big great sword, and Death used two hand scythes. So, I mean, I really like the character design too. I mean, it's, you know, the armor, the eyes, the hair, everything. I think it's spot on. And again, this might be because I never played the original Darksiders games. Or a lot of the original God of War. I mean, I played a little bit more. I played more of God of War than I did of Darksiders, but even that, I didn't play a whole hell of a lot of the original God of Wars. I mean, was dodging a big part of those games? Because I don't remember that. I remember it's a lot more hack and slash. I mean, maybe I'm reading something that isn't, you know, reading into something that isn't there, whatever. Again, art style, kind of going for this, not necessarily like a moving comic book in the way that something like, why can't I think of the title? Anything from Telltale would do. But I still see kind of like a comic book sort of style to the art.
What would you ask of this humble merchant?
That's a really creepy thing.
This will be fun for both of us.
Okay, so that's how you, yeah, okay, that's similar to the level up system. Alright.
Take your time. This will fetch both.
Okay. So what we're looking at here, before we saw this ingredients thing, see if I can chunk back just a little bit. Crap, sorry. Alright. So we're seeing these shards here. I mean, I think healing shard makes pretty good idea what these are, or what, you know, healing shards are. Fortification is probably going to boost your defense. But now, when I first saw this, I was thinking Havoc shard is going to be kind of like your rage in God of War, but we have Havoc, Frenzy, and Wrath. I don't know what all the differences are between those. I mean, I haven't seen a whole hell of a lot from this game. But do they have like 3 different sort of systems like Rage, or are all of them kind of the same thing? They just give you different amounts. I'm not sure. All right. All right, and I'm assuming that these are things that you can find and just trade them for souls, which are currency. I also assume that those souls are used to then level up.
I knew you couldn't resist. As you wish. Farewell for now.
Again, I'm sorry, I'm going back here because I wasn't fast enough on the pause. So we saw feed souls. That's a level up sort of thing. Show me your wares is a, obviously selling stuff. I'm curious to see what serpent holes are. Again, this is all, I hate always saying this. This is probably stuff that we're not going to find out till we play the game come November 27th. But I'm just again keep it thing to remember. Maybe it's kind of like a rune system. I'm thinking. Again, total guess. I mean, obviously this is taking place in a wrecked out sort of subway tunnel. Always being that the Darksiders games are kind of as far as I've understood them, it's kind of like Armageddon is happening. And in the first game with War, he's trying. I believe. God, I'm trying to remember the first game story. Wasn't War trying to either get his powers back, or he was trying to get his powers back, or maybe his memory? I can't fully remember exactly what he was doing in that game. And yeah, again, I can't fully remember what the story of the first Darksiders is. I remember seeing gameplay for it. I do not remember the story. If anybody's wondering why I didn't end on the interview with between PlayStation Blog and Miyazaki, it's just because I like ending on videos. Lets me relax and not have to read. But yeah, I mean, the first Dark Souls, I think he was trying to regain his powers and memories and maybe find his sword or his horse or something like that. Oh, thanks, computer. I keep getting told I have updates I can't install, and I don't know why the hell it won't install these updates. Son of a bitch. Give me a second. Sorry about that. I'm assuming this is trying to show us a little bit of the openness of the area. Again, just kind of showing off the environment. Because from what I remember, the Darksiders games, they are, I wouldn't say they're open world, but they're linear with side paths to explore, sort of thing. That looks like web. Why can't you just cut that down? Gross. Not sure what the hell that was, but gross. Okay, she's gonna run back there and throw that. I think it explodes. The hell? Oh, I get. Okay, so it eats that. Oh, interesting. Okay. Little puzzle solving. Using the environment and everything. Okay. Ooh, this looks... Anybody else getting a fight feeling, or a small boss fight? I can just see it. Jeez, how did I know? Is it that every video game ever has done something like this? Oh, gross. It's like fighting the Shalmor in Witcher. And so you let it roll at you and hit the ground. Or hit the walls of the arena. I still want to know why the hell the sound isn't right. I mean, for as much money as IGN should have, their sound shouldn't be that bad. I mean, this is similar to what happened. I think I was trying to do something from E3 from them, that they had gameplay of Hitman 2. You just stand in front of him swinging your sword, and okay, it was an interesting decision. They're just standing in front of it, letting it charge you. Of course you're going to take damage because you're a moron. Granted, it's something I would do as well, so I guess I'm also a moron. I get that way when I see the health bar of the enemy get just there. I start just going ham, and then I realize, oh, I'm screwed. Okay, anything more out of this? No, it looks like more puzzle solving and everything. Okay, I think that's a good little look at this at Dark Souls 3, or not Dark Souls 3, Darksiders 3. What the fuck's wrong with me? All right, guys. Yeah, I gotta say I'm interested. Again, Darksiders has been one of those series that I've kind of always been meaning to play. I go back and forth on these kind of dumb hack and slash games. I really liked Bayonetta, and it's usually not a genre that I enjoy. So who knows? Maybe I'll give this one a shot. Maybe I'll really enjoy it. I know this little bit of gameplay wasn't. We didn't really see much story or anything, but again, I think we got to see a little bit of combat. Saw the store. Yeah, I think we saw some interesting things. But other than that, guys, yeah, that's going to about do it for this week. I want to say, as always, thank you so much for watching. Facebook, Twitter, the website, minds.com. Like I said at the beginning of the show, links to all that stuff are down in the description, along with links to every story and video I talked about this week, and timestamps. I don't know why I'm mentioning timestamps now, because it's the end of the video. But, like I said, all that social media is in the description for next week's show. If you have any articles or videos that you want to send me that you would like to see covered, please send me links on any of the social media platforms down below. You can also send them to me down in the comments. You can also tell me your opinion on anything that I talked about this week down in the comments, or just anything video game related in general, or if you want to ask me advice on life and all that. I personally wouldn't ask me on about anything about life, because I'm single, currently sitting in a dark room, and very depressed. I made myself sad. Like I said, you need to ask me about anything down in the comments. I'll be feel free to ask. I will always do my best to answer in a timely manner. And other than that, thanks for watching, everybody. And until next time, my name's AJ Gels. This is the Untitled Game channel. I'm out.